Here we go. Dear Judge, first of all, I'd like to mention that I have never been and never will be an aggressive person. The only thing I drank that night at the bar was non-alcoholic beer, and any act of potential violence that I might have used against the individual who introduced himself as a TikTok fitness influencer was purely, in self-defense. So I'd like oh, wait, shit. I'm sorry, this is not the script from my YouTube video, that's the prepared statement for a court hearing I have in 5 days. Anyway, I'm back. If you're not new to this channel, you probably know that calling out uneducated influencers and bro science meatheads whose brains have literally turned into anabolic porridge due to years of PED abuse is and always will be the backbone of this channel. Because there is nothing that kicks me in my balls harder than seeing narcissistic idiots who are homoerotically obsessed with gym culture giving advice to inexperienced people who actually have other occupations in their lives and just want to change their bodies for the better. It is here where the just mentioned cretins shine in all their glory, and through their superiority complex they advise beginners on their fitness journey, thinking they are gods who have absorbed all the knowledge in the world. While in reality they are usually the ones who are in desperate need of advice because their knowledge doesn't go beyond the sentence, "You have to be in a calorie deficit in order to lose weight, bro." That's why I've said, and still at least most of the time say, that you should look for training and nutrition advice from people with enough experience, backed by enough theoretical knowledge coming from some kind of scientific literature. But lately I've noticed that even the so-called science-based lifters, the guys who are supposed to save us from the plague of bro science, have started acting like a different breed of pretentious cunts. Not the anabolic meathead kind, but the overthinking, obsessed with every new study so I'm better than you nerds, who think muscle grows only when Dr. Mike gives a creepy smile in approval. So yeah, let's start with the deep stretch cult. First of all, yes, I get it. The latent position of a muscle during resistance training can increase hypertrophic signaling. There are studies, there is data, there's a lot of scientific explanation. But somehow, just like everything else in this stinky industry, that also got twisted into this idiotic obsession where every exercise has to be performed like you're trying to tear the muscle off the bone just to feel something and achieve that deep stretch. And suddenly, if you're not doing your biceps curls hanging upside down from gymnastics rings with a 3-second loaded stretch at the bottom, you're leaving gains on the table. And if you say something like, "Hey man, maybe I just want to do regular incline dumbbell press or biceps curls today and not dislocate my shoulders while chasing this sacred deep stretch sensation," you're instantly labeled as not optimal or training like a meathead back in the 80s. Problem is that this whole thing ignores context. More stretch isn't always better for everybody. Yes, like I said, recent research has shown that training at longer muscle lengths can elicit more hypertrophic adaptations, particularly in certain muscle groups like the hamstrings or triceps. The latent position stimulus seems to increase mechanical tension and satellite cell activation, which are both beneficial for muscle growth. That's real, it's valid. But here is what the Instagram biomechanics gurus forget to mention. These findings are contextual. They're often based on isolated controlled conditions, and most studies are short-term, use untrained subjects aka newbies, and control for almost nothing outside the lab. To really see the actual difference in muscle growth, more studies, in my opinion, should be conducted on intermediate to advanced lifters with roughly similar lifestyles and somewhat comparable genetic predispositions, which is easier said than done, I know, and the studies should last at least several months. Only then could we truly see just how much of a difference this whole deep stretch thing actually makes in the end. You also have to consider joint stress and individual variability. For example, deeper shoulder extension under heavy load, as seen in ultra-stretched incline cable flies or extreme range of motion cable lateral raises, places enormous passive tension on the rotator cuff and the joint capsule. Over time, this kind of 6 times per week high volume repetitive heavy loading in the stretched position can lead to anterior shoulder instability or even chronic impingement, especially when the not-so-experienced lifter is obsessively chasing the stretch rather than managing load and form. Over time, this can lead to wear and tear issues that don't show up on an Instagram reel, but will show up at your next physio appointment. And of course, there is also adherence. And as someone who trains people, I can tell you that this plays much bigger role than you think, especially with people who are new to the gym or people who are very busy and are not always as motivated as those narcissistic Instagram hemorrhoids. If your hypertrophy program constantly feels like some kind of stretching medieval torture, by the way, my usual porn search terms, how long are you really going to stick with it? You see, more than anything, muscle growth requires consistency and not 100% perfection. Not just one 8-week completely optimized deep stretch mesocycle that leaves you sore, miserable and demotivated. And let's not forget progressive overload. If chasing the deepest stretch forces you to use much lighter weights, reduce range of motion in the actual concentric, or leaves you unable to push hard due to joint pain or this tearing pain at the deep stretch, which some people, especially the ones I mentioned earlier, can't just push through, are you even progressing? Look, stretch-focused hypertrophy works when it's layered on top of a foundation of progressive tension overload and of course consistency, not when it's used as a replacement for those things. You see, there is a big difference between technical improvements and visible results. Just look at all those alpha males reading 10 self-help books on self-confidence and charisma and still crying themselves to sleep. The extra gains from all those optimized deep stretch movements are probably microscopic when it comes to actual visible muscle size. But I've already said what kind of studies should be done here in my opinion. Sure, the data might show a few % more hypertrophy in a perfect lab setting, but in real life, in the mirror, on stage or on the beach, that difference is barely noticeable. And for the end, I want to briefly talk about the same gurus demonizing classic exercises. You know the type. Spends 3 hours a day on PubMed followed by 2 hours of watching biomechanics breakdowns and somehow still thinks he hasn't found the best lateral delt isolation exercise. Suddenly, the classic barbell row is suboptimal, the flat bench press is only good for the ego, etc. It's like people forgot that training isn't supposed to be a fucking Pokemon quest to find the rarest, most obscure movement imaginable.
Who's that Pokemon?
It is the fly curl press.
It's like I said 100 times already, about consistency, good programming and of course intensity, not constantly hopping from one more optimal movement to the next like a coked out lab rat. Yes, there is value in adjusting exercises to fit your body, your structure and your goals, but if you're constantly looking for a magic movement that makes you grow 3 times faster, you're probably not a real lifter, sorry. If your so-called scientific hypertrophy plan has you stressing over every single movement, every cable setup, every slight bench angle, losing hours overthinking and fiddling with equipment just to set up the perfect exercise, then maybe, just maybe, we've overcorrected from the bro science days. Anyway, liking and sharing this video would truly warm my cold, lifeless heart and liver. And of course, see you next time, comrades.